what I want to sort of talk about is often people ask me the question, how can there be so much money in poker? And can anyone smart and motivated succeed? And basically the answer is yes and no. It requires a very specific mentality for decision making, I would say. So I want to explain some of the pitfalls that a lot of even really smart and motivated people might go through and how poker players approach decision making a bit differently. So, so my outline is I'm going to first talk about the decision mentality, the mentality you want to get into as a poker player, which is very important, and then give an example of deductive reasoning and mind games, and then talk about some other statistical fallacies, and then conclude. So, okay, so the decision mentality. So I'm going to start with a little story. So I don't know how many of you guys have heard of this game. It's called credit card roulette. And this is a completely standard game when poker players go to restaurants. At the end, we don't split the bill. And rarely someone will be nice enough to pay for the whole table. What we do instead is everybody puts in their credit card, and we pull them out one at a time so that it's maximally exciting. And then the one that is still left in there at the very end has to pay for everybody. And this is completely normal. Whenever I go to dinner with poker players, they always do this. I've never seen this really ever not done. And so why do poker players do this, right? So this is one example of where poker players have a slightly different mentality. Why do they do this? I mean, our argument is it saves time, it's thrilling, we enjoy the gamble, and it's fair on average. That's the point that's important. It's fair on average. But it can lead to some funny situations. So, okay, so here's a true story that happened to not people I know personally, but Poker Pro Matt goes to dinner with Poker Pro Steven and brings Emily, a close friend who he also has romantic interest in. So, okay, so what happens? The bill comes, there's two poker players. So Matt agrees to pay for Emily's meal. So what he does is he puts in two credit cards. Okay, he puts in a credit card for Emily, and Steven still puts in his credit card. Now, so they play credit card roulette, and Matt, being really lucky, pulls out both of his credit cards to safety, and then Steven ends up paying for all three of them. Okay, and then what happens after is Emily thanks Steven for paying for her meal. So just as a show of hands, how many of you would thank Matt for paying for your meal? And how many of you would thank Steven for paying for your meal? All right, you guys are never going on a date with me. Okay, so, right, so it can create some funny stories like this. And what I want to sort of explain is this concept of expectation. So basically, the idea is that on average, Steven is going to end up paying for Emily's meal. So what I'm trying to argue is that really, sorry, not Steven, Matt. So what I'm trying to argue is that Emily should be thanking Matt for paying for her meal in this situation because Matt was the person who took the risk. And when he put in that credit card for her, really what he represented was paying for her a third of the time. So the idea is over your lifetime, the amount you end up paying from credit card roulette is the same as you would have paid from splitting the bill. So that's sort of the key idea, and it's this mathematical thing called the law of large numbers. And this is how poker players function. We really believe in this law. And the point is all randomness eventually averages out to the expected value. So if they went on this date with a third leg, if they did this 30 times, and all 30 times Matt put in the credit card for Emily, on average, Matt should have to pay 20 out of the 30 times. And the point is, eventually, if they do this date plus Steven enough times, it'll even out. So, but of course, there's this notion of risk. So you can't always just look at the average because the riskier the gamble, the longer it'll take for things to even out. But the whole point is eventually it'll even out. And this is the sort of the fundamental principle that poker players abide by to be able to make a profit at poker. So we sort of have the saying death, taxes, and the law of large numbers are the three things that eventually get you. You eventually get to your average with the law of large numbers. So there's a slight technical error in the picture. Does anyone recognize it? So the thing pictured there is actually the bell curve, which is not what the law of large numbers says. The law of large numbers says that you always hit your expected amount, the average amount, exactly. So, but the bell curve looks nice, so I chose that instead. Okay, so here's a standard trading interview question, right? So this sounds easy, right? So, okay, you just want to maximize the average amount you make, and then everything will work out for you in the long run. That sounds easy enough, right? So this is a standard trading interview question. A lot of you have probably heard this. Someone comes up to you, and it's your lucky day. You either get $10 for sure, or a 25% chance to win $50, right? And then now, okay, so put up your hand if you would get the $10 for sure, if that's what you would choose. And put up your hand if you want the 25% chance to win 50. Okay, good. So the expected amount you would get from the 25% chance to win 50 is just a quarter of 50, which is $12.50, right? So it's more than the 10. So it would make sense to want to get this. Now, the game is a bit different if the amounts are multiplied by a large number, right? Because now there's more risk. So let's say it's $1,000 or a 25% chance to win $5,000. So let me ask the question again. How many of you would want $1,000 in your hands? And how many of you guys would take the 25% shot to win $5,000? Okay, good. So this is what should be happening, right? So, right. So this trading interview question doesn't really have it. Your answer is correct as long as you're willing to take less risk as the amounts get higher. And that's what happened here, right? More people would take, when it was $10 versus $50, more people put up their hand to take the gamble, right? But when it went up to $1,000 and $5,000, more people put up their hand to get the $1,000 for sure. So as long as your answer isn't, if it's $10, I would rather gamble. Sorry, if it's $10, I'm going to take the $10 for sure. And if it's $1,000, I would rather gamble. As long as that isn't your answer, you've passed the trading interview question, basically. So, right. So the poker mentality is you want to make plus EV decisions. And the point is you shouldn't need to see the result. So if we go back to the credit card roulette story, the right mentality you want to get into to be a poker player, and when it comes to making decisions in general, is you shouldn't care about the result. You shouldn't really care whether you ended up having to pay the $1,000 bill or whatever. As long as, if you already made the decision to play credit card roulette, you should already be able to withstand the risk. And given that you made the decision to withstand the risk, you shouldn't really care whether you ended up actually paying. So ideally how the game would work is we just put in our credit cards and we don't even get to see who lost. Just one of us magically, we lose $1,000 on our credit card or something like that. So that's how ideally it would work. I mean, if we didn't enjoy the gambling. But the point is, you shouldn't care about the results. So, so here's an example that's somewhat silly, but okay, let's say you get off the wrong bus stop because you were distracted, right? So, so you would be upset at yourself. You want to analyze how to not get distracted in the future. Okay, but fortunately, you find $1,000 on the ground at this wrong bus stop. And you immediately stop analyzing and marvel at your riches, how you just found $1,000. So how many of you would do this? How many of you, if this happened to you, you would stop analyzing and be really happy about finding the $1,000? I mean, I would too, right? I mean, I think, yeah, so most of us would. But the point is, this is exactly what you don't want to do as a poker player. You want to analyze your decisions. You wouldn't have known that there was $1,000 there. And the point is, you want to have the mentality that you still want to have the mentality that you made a bad decision to get distracted and get off at the wrong bus stop. And here's sort of a reverse example that's maybe more common is, so you often hear this, someone accepts a promising business proposal or something of that form, and it doesn't end up working out because the other party didn't live up to their expectations or something happened. But then when you talk to the person in hindsight, they say, oh, look, everything I did was a mistake. I should have known better not to trust them. I'm so stupid. How did I not know at the time? How could I trust them? I got tricked so easily. I totally just made bad decisions. And I mean, part of what they're saying is probably true, but in reality, there's no way they could have known, right? If you just think about whether the person you made the proposal with being a coin flip, where if you get a heads, they're a great business partner, and if you get a tails, they're not. How could you have known the outcome of the coin flip? So I sort of gave two examples of one where you make a bad decision and get a good result, and one or you make a good decision and make a bad result. And the point is, in poker, this happens all the time because all edges are really, really thin. When you make a good decision, you only get a good result 51% of the time. And when you make a bad decision, you still get a good result 49% of the time. So in order to learn at poker and at things similar to poker, you can't just look at the result. You'll just learn too slowly if you look at the result because it'll only tell you the right answer 51% of the time. Right? So you have to remain analytical. And when you find that money on the ground, or equivalently, if you make a really bad gamble or a really bad play in poker but get lucky and win $10,000, you can't just be like, I'm so rich now. You still have to think about your decision and how you made a bad decision to take that gamble. So this is why I sort of said at the beginning, you want to be smart and motivated, but some of these concepts are kind of antithetical for smart and motivated people, right? Because motivated people like to see results, right? If you're like working out, let's say you're doing like bench press, you're saying, okay, I want the result of benching this weight by this month, and then benching 200 pounds by next month, and then 250 pounds the next month. Usually motivated people set goals that are results oriented. You want to achieve results. And this is the exact opposite of what you want in poker. And so this is why sometimes being smart and motivated makes it harder for you to succeed in poker. So this is one of the big differences in the way people make decisions that is necessary to play poker. So, okay. Now, so are there any questions about that section before I move on? Okay, so I'll leave questions at the end too. So, okay, so let's move on. So I want to give an example. Now that we know the right mentality we want to get into, I want to give an example of the deductive reasonings and this notion of mind games and this Lady Gaga notion of a poker face and how it actually deals in poker. Okay, so since I said I'm not going to assume you know the rules of poker, this is a very simple game that I can explain the rules of right now. That is the simplest game that can resemble poker. Okay, so there's two players. There's Call Me Maybe Carly and Colin. Okay, and there's only 3 cards in the deck: an ace, a king, and a queen. So both of them initially wager $1, and then they're dealt 1 card at random. Okay, and then Carly, she can check. So check means wager no more money. Or she can bet an additional $1. So if she checks, nothing happens. They both flip over their cards, and the person with the higher card wins the $2. So they win $1 from the other person. Okay, but if she bets, then Colin has to choose whether to call her. And Colin can either, so calling means matching a bet. So if Carly bets $1, Colin can either call the $1 or fold. Folding means giving up the hand. So if he calls, there's a showdown. So I'm using some poker terms here. It's okay if you haven't heard these terms before, but if there's any confusion, just ask. These are not just poker terms. They're like standard betting terms as well. But so I'm trying to explain everything on the go. But if there's any questions, please just ask, because there's probably someone else who's confused as well. But so I want everyone to understand this example. So okay, so if Colin calls, then they both flip over their hands again, but now the pot is bigger because they wagered additional money. Now they put in $2 aside, so the winner wins $2 from the loser. And if Colin folds, then Carly wins the $1 for free from Colin without them flipping over their hands. Okay, so these are the rules of the game. So this is a very simplified poker game.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is probably obvious, but so the player with the higher card wins, right? That's how they win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can't have a tie because there's only 1 copy of each card in the 3-card deck.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to make some, so what are the decisions here? So what are the strategies? I want to talk about strategies in this game. So Carly, basically, her decision is whether to bet or check, right? That's the only decision she has. She decides whether to wager an additional $1. And then Colin, his decision is when Carly wagers the additional $1, Colin has to decide whether to match that $1 or not, right? So I made a table, basically, what Carly's strategy is with the 3 cards and what Colin's strategy is with the 3 cards. Okay, so I filled in the most obvious ones first in non-bold. So I'm saying if Carly gets the ace, she should bet. This makes sense because she has the best possible card. She can't lose, right? She knows she's winning, so she wants to put more money in the pot to win more money from Colin. So she definitely wants to bet if she gets the ace. Now, if Colin has the ace and Carly bets, then Colin should definitely call, right? He should definitely put in the money because he knows he's going to win. The ace is the best card. And if Colin has the queen, he's going to fold. He's not going to put in the money because he knows he's going to lose no matter what, right? So this bet, this call, and this fold are sort of obvious. Is this clear to everyone? Because if you don't understand this, you're not going to understand the next points. And I'm happy to stop and answer questions. I don't have a very long talk prepared. So
I have a question.
yeah.
Which ones are bold?
Oh, sorry. The
Check is bold.
yeah. So not the check. Everything except the check.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good. So now that you understand that.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
So I still don't understand. Why would Carly want to check on a king?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to explain that now. But
Right,
if you understand the other three.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Okay. So okay. Good. So so why would Carly want to check on the king? So the point is, my claim is if you understand the first 3 points I made, then it's obvious that Carly should check on a king. Why is this? Because you know that Colin, so when you have the king, what are the possibilities, right? The possibilities are Colin has the ace or Colin has the queen. Assuming Colin calls with the ace and folds with the queen, assuming he's not, yeah. Okay. Okay, right. So, that's a good question. So the point is Colin can't bet in this game. His question is what if Colin can bet with the queen, and get her to fold the king, but Colin can't bet. So the game is actually asymmetric. That's a very good point. The game is asymmetric. Yeah. Okay. So the point is Carly should always check with the king, because if she bets, Colin's only going to wager that additional dollar when Colin has a better hand, right? When Colin has the ace, he's going to call and wager the additional dollar and just win the extra dollar from Carly. And if Colin has the queen, he's not going to call Carly's dollar bet. So if Carly has the king, whenever she wagers the extra dollar, she's only going to lose that extra dollar. So there's no point for her to win the extra dollar, because if she has the king and Colin has the queen, she can just check and she'll turn over the king and Colin will turn over the queen and she'll win anyway. So is that clear? Is that clear why Carly is checking? Okay, good. So this is sort of the one strategy tip I'm going to give you related to poker in this talk, and it's very basic, but it's non-intuitive. But the idea is a lot of people, when they start playing poker, they bet with the best hands, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to bet my better half of hands and not bet my lower half of hands. But by this logic, this is not what you want to do, because when you're betting, you're trying to get a worse hand to call you, or getting a better hand to fold. So the intuitive thing is not the correct thing. The intuitive thing, as you can see by this chart, is to bet with the ace, check with the medium strength hand, the king, and as you'll see on the next slide, perhaps bet with the queen, right? So why would you bet with the queen? That's crazy, right? That's the worst card, but why would you bet with the queen? Right, exactly. So the reason you bet with the queen but not with the king is because you can get Colin's king to fold. Okay, so the 2 question marks are sort of the 2 complicated parts where the answer is unclear what you do. Okay, so now let's just do a quick calculation of expectation against a checking Carly. Okay, so let's suppose you're Colin and you know that Carly checks whenever. So Carly is not risky at all. She doesn't bet. She doesn't bluff with the queen. Okay, so if you do some calculations, you'll see that your EV, or your expectation from folding, is 0, and your EV from calling is -1/6. And this makes sense because if she's not bluffing the queen, why should you call the king, right? You're never going to win when you call her, because every time she bets, she has the ace. So the point is, if you're playing against checking Carly, then folding with the king is what you want to do, because you're just always going to lose when you call. Now, what if you're against betting Carly? What if she always bets whenever she has the queen? She's always bluffing. Then, if you do the calculations, you'll find out that calling with the king is still the correct decision, even though Carly will sometimes turn over the ace. So if you do the calculation, that's what's going to happen.
Wait, but they're both equal.
Oh, sorry, 1 is a minus 1/6.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
like they even each other out, right? So.
Uh,
Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, no, so, right, so in the first case against Checkin Carly, the best you can do is fold, which is gives you a 0 EV. And against betting Carly, the best you can do is call, which gives you a positive EV. And, okay, so the point is this game seems pretty good for calling Colin, right? If Carly's strategy is to always check, then his EV, then Carly's EV against us is 0. And betting Carly, she loses against us, right? So we're gonna gain 1/6, and she's gonna lose 1/6. So this game seems pretty good for Colin, but this doesn't really make sense. Yeah. So, yeah.
Why is it better than fixed?
Right. Exactly. So that's the point. So from the analysis I just did, it seems like this game is pretty good for Colin, right? But why should this game be in Carly's advantage? There's a simple reason why this game should be in Carly's favor. Yeah.
Colin doesn't know her strategy.
Right, exactly, right. But the point is, she has an extra move, right? Carly can always just check if she wants, right? If Carly just always checks, then it's an even game. But Carly has the additional option to bet, and Colin has to decide whether to call her. So basically, this game should be in Carly's favor, and how she does it, right? So the idea is Colin doesn't know the enemy. So this is a big concept in poker, is all the analysis I just did is easy and fine and dandy and stuff like that, but you don't know the enemy. And this is one of the big parts of poker that I'm just getting to now, right? So, okay, so this is a saying, the fatal flaw in every plan is the assumption that you know more than your enemy. Anyone recognize where this is from? Yeah.
Player checks the panel.
Right. Okay, that's really specific. Yeah. So this is from a Magic card, which is the competitive game I played before I played poker. Okay. But I think it applies a lot here, right? So in poker, a big flaw is you always assume you know more about the enemy than the enemy knows about you, right? But in reality, your enemy is also studying the game, is also maybe coming to my talk, is also thinking along this, right? So how do you get one level ahead of them, right? So how does the mind games work? Yeah.
This particular game seems like it probably has a mixed strategy Nash Equilibrium that you'll end up at.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we'll get to that. Good. So right. So even if the game is repeated, he can make some initial observations about Carly, but Carly can change her strategy, right? She's not always going to bet. If she's always bluffing, then it's too easy. But if she's never bluffing, that's also too easy, right? So it sort of introduces this sort of cycle, right? If Colin sees that Carly is betting with the queen, then what should he do? He should call with the king, right? Because she's bluffing with the queen. He doesn't want to get bluffed off the king. He's going to call. But then Carly can see this, and she'll stop bluffing with the queen. Why should I bluff with the queen if he's just always going to call with the king, right? But then Colin will see this, and he's going to stop calling with the king. But then Carly will see this and start bluffing with the queen again. So earlier I was talking about, you're thinking about your opponent. Your opponent is also thinking about you. There's this back and forth, right? It's this old, like, I know that he knows that, I know that he knows that, I know that he knows. There's this game, and it can go on forever, right? So how does this work? So what's the answer to this? So basically, I'm not going to get into the details, right? But it's what you said. There's this notion called a Nash Equilibrium. But the important thing is, so if you've seen The Beautiful Mind, The Beautiful Mind is a movie basically about the guy, John Forbes Nash, who's a professor at Princeton who came up with this idea. But I'm not going to discuss the theoretical aspects of it. So the point is I want to discuss the practical aspects of this concept when it comes to poker. So let's go back one slide. Does anyone recognize what game this is similar to? Hint is look at the title. Right. Okay. Good. Right. Rock, paper, scissors. So you hear about all these like reading somebody's soul. Reading somebody's soul expressions like this. Like you got to wear sunglasses so that someone can't look in your eyes, and stuff like this. It's basically more a marketing strategy. And really, when all this leveling, like I know that you know that, I know that you know, all these games really come down to this. But there are two schools of thought. And there's very good poker players who believe in both schools, who on either side, and there's not really an agreement on what's the better way to play poker. So there's actually, I would consider, there's actually two main classes of poker players in the way they think about the game, and it's not really settled which side is better. And yeah, there's really good players, world-class players on both sides. So there's the side that plays optimally and the side that plays exploitively. So what's the difference? The difference is the optimal side. Okay, so let's go. The exploitive side is the people who always try to be one level ahead of their opponent, right? I think this time, because he played 3 scissors and 1 rock and 2 paper in the last 6, he's going to play rock. So I'm going to play paper and beat him. Okay, so this is how exploitive poker players think. They think about the pattern that happened, and they think about what their opponent is going to do. Okay, but optimal poker players, they say, okay, I'm not going to get into these mind games. I don't want to get into these mind games. I'm just going to play it safe and play rock, paper, scissors all exactly a third of the time, so that no matter what my opponent does, they can't win against me. So exploitive play is sort of like attacking play, and optimal play is sort of like defensive play, where you don't want your opponent to beat you. And both are legitimate, right? So yeah, exploitive play, the good thing is you can make a lot of money if you're right? If I can actually read your soul, if I'm actually just on today and just really onto you, I can win a lot of money from you, right? If I always know when you're bluffing, always know when you're not bluffing, then I can win a ton of money from you. But the disadvantage is, what if I'm wrong, right? What if you're tricking me? If I'm always one step behind, I'm going to lose a lot of money. So it's sort of riskier. Whereas optimal play, what you'll do, you won't be like, oh, I think he's bluffing, I'm going to call. What you're going to do is you're going to you're going to find the optimal fraction of your hands that you should call with or bluff with, and you're going to flip a coin inside your head or memorize a sequence of random bits, something like that. And all your decisions are going to be based on that, as opposed to looking into your opponent's eyes. And so in the examples I gave, right, if you play rock, paper, scissors, and you only play rock, paper, and scissors 33% of the time each, you're never going to win any money from anybody, right? You're never going to win any money from anybody. So, and yeah.
Well, completely unrelated question. How do you flip coins in your head?
Right. So, right. So you can memorize a sequence of random bits, but no, the usual thing to do is poker players usually wear an analog watch. And we look at the time, and we decide, like, if it's, so say I want to call 30% of the time, then I'm going to, or let's say 25% of the time. Then I say, okay, if it's between 1 and 4, I'm going to call. If it's between 4 and 1, I'm going to fold. Yeah. right. But they don't know the, right, so that's why poker players often wear an analog watch, to generate random numbers. Or at least pretend that they're generating random numbers. Okay. Good. Okay, right. So, but I did point out a mystery, right? How can optimal poker players win money? Because if you play rock, paper, scissors, where you play 33% each all the time, you're never better than anybody either, right? No matter what they do, you're not better than them. How can you win money? So the answer is sort of, in poker, unlike the 2 games I gave you, it's possible to do like make strictly dominated bad decisions, where sometimes you fold a strictly better hand than you call with in a different spot. So basically, when the game is more complicated, you can win money from optimal play, even though in the examples I gave, you can't win money from optimal play. So, yeah.
Is there agreed upon optimal play percentages for poker?
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah. Good. So the game is nowhere near solved. No one knows the optimal play, but you can still strive to play near optimally, or you can strive to read your opponents, even if that means bluffing 100% of the time. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a bit more on what you said right now? Because this is a zero-sum game. So
right.
If both players or all the players play optimally long enough, the money cannot just be created. So it has to be 0 at the end. So
right.
There's no. Could you just
Right. So optimal play, so in exploitive play, you win money by being ahead of your opponent. Okay. In optimal play, you win money by people making strictly bad decisions.
You mean other people making decisions that are not optimal?
Right. But not optimal in the sense that they sometimes fold a better hand than they call. So I don't know if you've played rock, paper, scissors, dynamite. Okay. So the easiest example of where you win money with optimal play is rock, paper, scissors, dynamite. It's basically rock, paper, scissors And there's dynamite, where dynamite is like strictly better than scissors. No, strictly better than paper. Dynamite is strictly better than one of them, and the game reduces to like rock, paper, dynamite. But if your opponent ever plays scissors, then you'll win money from optimal play. So the good thing about optimal play is you'll never lose money. You're never going to lose money, and you'll win money when you run into that opponent who plays the really bad. Yeah.
But basically, if all of the players on the table are all playing the optimal,
Yeah.
then it's not just a zero-sum game, but it's an expected value of 0 for all of them, except
Right,
the house,
exactly.
which always wins.
Right, so it's a negative. Everybody is losing then, right? Sorry, Neville, you had a question? You had a question?
So just a comment that so if you have a unique Nash Equilibrium,
Okay.
a solution of
Yeah.
an outcome where you would have an optimal play, but then, like your previous example, there's
Mm-hmm.
many
Yeah.
equilibria, and it doesn't really help you define what your optimal play is.
Right, yeah. So there,
One of those could
right.
be optimal if the other is.
Yeah. There could be different optimal strategies. Yeah. But it's more of, I'm not really trying to get too mathematical. It's more like a type of thinking. You can either have an exploitive play type of thinking or an optimal play type of thinking when you're playing. And yeah.
And which one are you?
Okay, so I would say, I'm an exploitive play type of thinking. Yeah, I'm an ego player, I would say. So I try to stay ahead of my opponents, and right. But the idea is, if I'm playing against someone who's really good, so that's a good question. If I'm playing against someone who I really respect, right? I mean, I wouldn't be playing against them, but sometimes you don't get a choice in tournaments who you play against. If I'm playing against someone really good, then I switch. So basically, it depends on my respect for my opponent. And that's how it should be, right? If my opponent is better at psychology than me, then how could I be ahead of them in this I know that you know that I know that you know game, right? Then I'm just going to look at my watch and make all my decisions based on my watch. But if I'm playing against a beginner and they're not wearing sunglasses or just I'm gonna be playing exploitively. But my default is to play exploitively. Yeah.
Somebody can make an argument that if you do an optimal play, there's actually no play, there's no any value.
Right.
If you figured out all the probabilities, why bother going to the table?
Right. Okay, good. Right. So it's more of a right. I mean, okay, fine. So there's right. So yeah, there's no decisions if you figure out every optimal thing, but it's still more like a mentality. Like often, you have certain rules for how you play at the start of the hand or pre-flop, and then you decide to play optimally post-flop or like at the end of the hand based on what you did at the beginning of the hand. So it's more like a general mentality than no one actually knows how to play exactly optimally. Yeah. But it's like a way of thinking about the game.
Yeah, so I had 2 questions in respect to that. So first of all, what you're saying, it's really you have a meta strategy of switching between optimal and exploitative based on your opponent. So
right.
it's really a little bit more. But in response to what was said there, I think maybe the question is, right, in rock, paper, scissors, there's a very clear, easy way to play optimally.
Right.
In poker, you can't really run all the probabilities through your head in the span of the game, right? You have to make approximations.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to make mistakes, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I am a perfect poker player, but I'm going to try to play optimally. And and I will make mistakes, and everyone will make mistakes. And yeah, but the idea is I'm trying to play optimally. Yeah, I mean, I won't always succeed, but.
But is the notion here that you're going to play for a really long time, you have finite time and finite money? The fact is you really don't have it. You have a limited amount of money, so doesn't that change your strategy in terms of how you play, or is it still?
Not really, because I mean, in general, this is more of like like the number of hands. Yeah.
When it comes to practically playing, does it matter how much money you have left or how many chips you have left?
Not really. I would say okay. That's it. So you're asking me is one of these types of play more risky than the other, right? Because you're saying it depends on how much money I have left. No, I would say not really. That's a good question. I would say one is not riskier than the other. I mean, optimal play is maybe a bit less risky, but because it's harder to make a big mistake when you play optimally. But I usually don't take that into account. I mean, I usually only play, and that's the recommended thing, is you only play games that are low enough stakes where you can withstand pretty much any reasonable amount of risk. So you should always just make the play that maximizes your expected value. Yeah.
Disparate value is if you take a large number of hands before you get
Right.
disparate values.
Right.
So you're saying if anything other option of studies play is actually not any better or worse. So strategy-wise, does it make a difference as to like how many? You might need like 1,000 hands before you get to the expected value.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So how far along, how much you have left, or you don't have enough money to pay 1,000 hands, and does that change what you do?
Yeah, it changes what I mean, I would probably just stop playing if I don't have enough money to play 1,000 hands. But yeah, in terms of between optimal and exploitive, I would say it doesn't really change when switching between these two mentalities. But it changes my strategy, definitely, but it won't change between my mentality, it won't affect my mentality for the most part, yeah. Okay, I think I'm going to skip this slide. Yeah.
Do you also, for you, like the optimal, you said for a great, like if you respect your opponent,
yeah,
then you use the left-hand side. Do you also use that if they're total strangers? Like if you're in a random place where they have no idea, just people are coming and going?
No, so my default is to use exploitive play.
But if
Yeah, until.
total strangers and you really have no idea, then you can't learn anything. Right? So wouldn't it be more like the left-hand side?
Right, so I mean, I would observe them, and yeah, so.
But he assumes that he's better.
Saying you're
So
playing
you-
one hand against someone.
Did I read that you won the Paris tournament in 2007?
Yeah.
And you got like 77th in the World Series of Poker like a couple years ago. Like, I say your chances of being better than like
In
the
a
average
random
player
selection.
is like really good, right? So it's probably a good option, right? Like,
And he
maybe.
probably knows the people who are better than him.
I mean, I didn't know if you were going to mention it, but.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna skip this slide. Right, so I think I'm gonna skip through this too. Okay, so good. Okay, so that's sort of my spiel on the reading your opponent thing, right? So there's these two schools of thought. So that's the second thing I wanted to do. So I wanted to talk about some other quick things involving poker, other things involving decision making that sort of are different between, or like common fallacies that you can step into. So why is there so much money in poker? So the biggest reason of all is basically it's out of all games I know, it's the one where it's the easiest to overestimate your own abilities and blame luck for all losses. Okay, you ask any poker player, no one thinks they're lucky, okay? I am the least lucky person in the world. I deserve to be like 5 times as rich as I am. Like, no poker player ever thinks they're lucky. And so everybody thinks they're way better than they are. And that's basically the reason why poker is... That's one of the main things about poker that's really hard to grasp. Is out of all games I know, it's the one where it's, you know, it's not like you play like, I don't know, like if you play a sport, right? Like if you do like, I don't know, let's say marathon running. If you're not good at marathon running, you would realize it and you wouldn't think you were good, right? If you can't finish the marathon, you won't be like, I'm great at this. But in poker, every time you get lucky, you think, oh yeah, I'm the most skilled. And when you get unlucky, even if you do something dumb, you're like, oh, it's just all luck. And I don't know exactly why, but this is like a key aspect of the game that that causes it to be played for a lot of money. And right, so basically no one in poker thinks that they're a losing player. Very few people do. And the idea is, so in reality, 95% of players are going to be losing players. But no one thinks of going to a poker game Friday night. Like no poker amateur, when they go to a poker game on a Friday night, will think, I'm losing $10 of EV at this poker game. That's just like seeing a movie for $10. I'm spending $10 either way, and I would rather play poker than see the movie. So I'm going to just go to the poker game and lose $10. No one thinks like this. Everyone thinks when they go to the poker game that they're going to win $100, right? There's a few exceptions. So last year, a really nice story was David Einhorn, I think founder of Greenlight Capital, billionaire, multi-billionaire. He played a $1 million poker tournament buy-in. And I'm pretty sure this is a smart guy. He knows that he's not a winning player in that tournament, but he still chose to do it, and just for fun, basically, because he's got a couple billion to his name, so it doesn't matter. And he happened to actually come third for $4 million and donated it all to charity. But this is one of the few cases I know where a player entered the tournament knowing that they're not a positive expectation player. But right, so there's this confidence issue, but there's this necessity of confidence. So there's this huge conflict poker players face. You can't be overconfident or you're going to go broke, but you need to be confident to take the right risks. if you're really unconfident, then you'll never choose to take a risk, and then you'll just never make any money. And also, if you want to win the I know that you know that I know that you know game, you need to be confident. And also, as I said before, often you're going to make a good decision and you're going to get unlucky and get a bad result. If you're not confident, you won't trust that you made a good decision. So confidence is really necessary, yet it's so bad. And so that's another big thing that in the poker player's mentality that makes it that is a big difference, I would say, in how they think about making decisions. And another thing is underestimating variance. And basically, I think there's a statistical experiment involving I don't know, I think it's something like you get someone to either flip 200 coins in a row and write down all the results, or you get someone to make up 200 coin flips in a row, and all the made up sequences won't contain a chain of 7 or more heads, and all the real ones will. And basically everybody underestimates the variance in a random walk. Just when you're just gambling, winning, losing, even if your expectation is positive, you're going to go through streaks when you just lose 20 times in a row, and there's nothing you can do. And everyone underestimates how likely it is. Everyone underestimates the likelihood of going on these huge downswings. And this is another, I'd say, a big mentality thing to poker, is controlling your anger or your tilt when you go on this. And the picture here is a pretty common picture for poker players, I'd say. Online poker players, we hit our mouse against the table so much when we're upset, and eventually the table breaks. Yeah.
So you're saying it's a psychological thing, the influence of variance is mostly a psychological thing?
Yeah.
So this is sort of my question about the credit card roulette, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite of what you want to do, because the easy way to minimize variance is to not play credit card roulette.
Right.
So why do that when in your poker playing it's the exact opposite of the play you want to do?
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good question. Right, yeah, I mean, it's basically to save time. Yeah, it's to save time, basically, yeah.
The entertainment value.
Right, exactly.
And of course, credit card roulette only works if you go out with the same people
Right.
consistently.
Well, no, not even that.
Yeah.
Well, if you do
Yeah, if you
go
go
out
with
with the
them,
same
yeah.
group consistently, at least your EV is.
Right, okay, and another big thing that about poker, and I'd say it's similar for things like startups, anything that's extremely risky, is so it's the worst place to be overconfident in some sense, right? Because if you're playing a sport like hockey, right, so you're getting better at hockey, so sorry, I'm Canadian, so I really like hockey, but you're getting better in hockey, you're getting better, you're playing B, then A, then AA, then AAA, eventually you stop, right? Eventually you get to AAA or whatever, and you can't get any better, right? You're like, I give up, okay, I can't get better than this at hockey, and then what happens? You just go home and you're fine, right? But in poker, you first play $1 stakes, then $2, then $4, right? You keep winning. Eventually you get to a point when you lose, but the problem is when you realize that you can't win anymore, it's already too late. You've already lost all your money. So in some sense, it's actually, this is a huge deal as well. It's a problem because you need to basically give up before you've actually failed. Like in hockey, you fail and then you're like, okay, I give up. But in poker, you keep playing against better and better players, but you basically have to decide to stop trying before you actually can no longer win. Because once you're at the point when you can no longer win, it's too late. I mean, okay, there's Kelly criterion rules where you can move back down when you lose, but no one really wants to do that. When you work really hard at the lower stakes, make some money, take a shot at the higher stakes, get unlucky, and lose, no one has the motivation to go back to the lower stakes and slowly make back all that money that you lost in one hand at the higher stakes. So,
But Will, isn't that at that point a good time to sort of stop doing poker and get a job in finance?
right, yeah. So, right. So there's this. Right. So it's a difficult thing. Right. So it's a difficult thing to learn. So I mean, I would say there's. So yeah. So there's. I sort of went through a lot of the pitfalls and the things that poker players think about, and I hope these things can be useful to other aspects of life. So, okay, so to conclude, I want to tell you a story about Bill Gates and Doyle Brunson, who's a poker professional. One of the people who made poker famous, I'd say. So Bill Gates sees Doyle Brunson playing in Vegas and wants a signature. So Bill Gates goes up to Doyle Brunson, who's playing a $1,000, $2,000 blind game, and asks for Doyle's signature. And Doyle says, I'll give you my signature if you sit down at the table with us. And Bill Gates refuses and walks away and doesn't get Doyle's signature. And from what I know, from last I checked, Bill Gates is a successful poker player at not super high stakes, but he wins money at poker, and clearly it's not worth his time to play poker as a way of making money, but the guy just enjoys making good decisions, and he enjoys, it's not really even about the money at this point, him playing poker. He enjoys making good decisions, and that's basically a good way to approach things. It's not even about the money or anything in the long run. You should just sort of, I guess, what I wanted to leave you with is I want you to enjoy making the right decision and not care too much. Try not to care about the outcome too much. There's this other poker phrase, Skalansky bucks. So instead of asking someone, how rich are you, or how much did you win, you ask them, how many Skalansky bucks did you make? And these are basically expected dollars. They're not real dollars. They're expected dollars. And you're asking someone, how much expected money did you win? Right? Okay, right. So, there's a few, right? So poker sounds pretty easy. You just make positive expectation decisions, and slowly you'll get rich. But right, sometimes, maybe not in poker, but in other things, you only have one chance. What do you do, right? So, so one thing I can recommend is sort of writing down in stone your rationale at the time of making the decision, and reading it whenever you feel any regret, so that you don't regret it after. But everything I said sounds all sugar-coated. Make good decisions, and the law of large numbers will make you win in the long run, and then life will be all great. But right, sometimes in life you'll take really big risks, and you only live once. So so the thing I'll end you with is this idea of one long session. So I'm gonna play a video online. This is courtesy of Jennifer Shahade, a good friend of mine, 2-time U.S. women chess champion and professional poker player, and a big activist for female gamers. So she made this video. It's a bit creepy, but I want you to watch. I want you to watch carefully and tell me what you learned from tell me what you think of it, and see if you notice. Okay, so what's the message in the? Does someone have a guess of what the message is in the video? Yeah.
Bears easily rage.
Okay, right. So if you watch carefully, you'll notice that the girl goes through Goldilocks goes through a lot of different ages during that one poker hand. Right. During that one poker hand, she starts off being a very young, maybe like 15. Goes through a period of looking through like she's 50, 20, and then looking middle-aged. Basically, she goes through a lot of ages during that one poker hand. And basically, the idea is you want to think about this. You want to think every time you're playing poker or making any decisions, you want to think. You don't want to think, okay, I got to get a good result on this decision. You want to think about your whole life as one long poker session or one long decision-making session. And you want over the course of your life to make the best decisions you can. And the law of large numbers should work in your favor in the long run. So that was sort of the thesis of the video, how the girl, it was one poker hand, but she went through basically an entire life's worth of ages in that one poker hand. So with that, I want to thank everyone a lot for coming, and I want to wish everyone the best of luck in the one long session that is your life. Thank you very much.